Good afternoon. It's confirmed that the appearances are if we are any changes.
On our side, please look up the appearances as in the morning, say that we are aware that he's on his way. He has just called to say he's on his way back.
Mr.
We are the same except for the fact that Mr. Oche called brief now for Mr. Barak for the 6th of August.
So we are ready to proceed with the examination.
Yes. My ladies, first, before we start,
Yes.
it's now just after 4 o'clock.
Yes.
I have my witness, P.S. Jerome, waiting.
Yes.
I'm wondering because Mr. Yoroga says he will need an hour and a half, whether there is any possibility that we will start a fresh witness after 5, or should I risk? Or what would be your direction, my lady?
Mr. Regan, would you like me to take that long for the examination?
Possibly between 1 hour and I think 1 hour.
Okay, Dr. It looks like we may not be able to proceed with that witnesses examination today. So we will start with the witness tomorrow. So, Mr. Regan, we are ready with you.
Yes.
Contact this channel. Now, Dr. Kibicho, you are reminded you are still under oath.
Thank you, Glenn. Dr. Kibicho asked you some questions in re-examination arising out of the questions that you asked this morning. And the first question relates to the system names, which has become like the proverbial elephant, and the 7 blind men who each described the elephant differently depending on what part they touched of the elephant. Fortunately, we have you as the administrator here, Mr. Dr. Kibicho. In a word, briefly, demystify this thing. What is names?
Thank you. I think I start by saying, as we implement government policies, we are starting by the commitment of the current government, the Kenyan people, since 2013, when they came to the platform of digital thing and going into a digital era. And we have seen what happened in all forums, all areas. We have seen that digitalization even go to even examinations, like before, we went to get our results in a day through our mobile phones, and so many other areas, the land registry, registration of companies, and the only lacking area that we have was the creation of digital population register. And this is not a new effort. I started saying I have done it way back in 1989. We had an attempt to write PRS, and all of them did not create what the current government was looking for. And it is because of that, and because the program says it's a Huduma number, which is citizen focused and provision of service, that the policy we decided that we create a tool that will help government plan for its resources, be able to offer services to Kenyans in a manner that is efficient and least inconvenience to Kenyans. And what, if I give you an example, so that I don't use so many words, I try to do is, for example, when our register in this court allows it, comes to be, we have everybody in a digital population register. It will be very easy for government, for example, if you want to carry out polio vaccination for children under 6 years. What we do now is estimate and say probably we have 3 million children 6 years, and buy polio vaccination that we think will be appropriate. Chances are we either overbuy or we underbuy, and the consequences are obvious. So when we have this, it's possible for us to say that today we accurately have the following number of children who need polio vaccination, because you have a digital population register and act properly. When it is time for these kids to go to class 1 or 1 or university, we accurately know that this year we need this number of kids in class 1, therefore we need to employ the following number of teachers, we need to buy the following number of exercise books, and plan. If at age 18, we the government want, for example, to carry out an exercise like without losing sensitivity of some of the statements, say electoral register. The digital population register knows that today there are the following number of people who have turned 18, and we are therefore in a position to push this data to the organization that needs it for use, and therefore save government a lot of resources in what we traditionally do by just signing loads and loads of people. That is from the government planning perspective. But from the Mwananchi perspective, we know of cases where you go for services. If you, through our king, if you open your wallet now, you will count about 10 cards for the same government. And we are saying, why wouldn't we produce a card that instead of when you appear somewhere for NSSF services, someone sends you to bring your ID, someone sends you to bring your tax compliance, someone sends you to bring all sorts of documents. Why can't we have one card that is representative of all those, so that when you produce it, then the others are implied without bothering you, so that all the other things are backroom processes. And that is the promise that the government gave the Kenyan people was given into power.
Thank you very much. Very, very useful. Now, you are taking through certain articles of the Constitution at the beginning of the cross-examination, Article 1, Article 10, and so on. And also issues to do with public participation. Are you aware that under Article 118 of the Constitution, the legislative function has been delegated to Parliament by the citizens?
I am aware of that statement from Article 118. And I am also aware of it. That sovereignty through either direct or through democratically elected leaders.
Yes.
Very aware. But knowing also that we as the ministry, when we did this, decided to use both legislative, because there was active public participation when we wanted the amendment to the law. It is public, it is known, but even before, because this to be clear, before we actually started these court proceedings, this court proceedings started on February 14, 2019. We started and completed completed our public participation well ahead of time. Actually, the time when we went to the lowest deployment of our infrastructure called the assistant chief was between the 21st January and 5th February. Yes, so it was well. 21st of January to 5th of February. I've checked those.
Which year?
2019. That's when we started the aggressive participation of the public. But I also want to say that between 15th and 17th of February, before any orders were given, we conducted countrywide sensitization where we did a pilot program. This pilot program was done in 15 counties, 40 sub-locations, where we collected a huge volume of feedback from the public and adjusted our systems so that they would comply with what the public had said. And those documents are available for scrutiny. The big reports, what did the public say when we sent all the PSAs, all the CSAs, all the assistant chiefs to the public to carry out the pilot in 4 extreme counties. Those ones which are cosmopolitan, those ones with hardship areas are inclusive of 40 sub-locations. And we implemented the feedback from that successfully.
Okay. And you are also the Parliament, even as it acts under Article 118, also has its own standing orders. So how it conducts its business. Yes. Thank you very much. Then there is the issue of what is mandatory and what is not mandatory on the data capture form. Do you remember that information? Page 12 and 13 of the big document.
I say that for this form, the only mandatory information that we needed was for those who are citizens who are above 18. Mandatorily, we needed the ID. And for those who are below 18, mandatorily, we needed the birth certificate. Of course, for the non-citizens, we needed a passport or a alien card, depending on their status of stay here.
Yes.
Every other information was voluntary. And it is so, even by practice. When we went out there are people who just show up. And we are aware that there are people who have only an ID card. They don't have NSSL, they don't have driver, they don't have anything else. They haven't even gone to school, so they don't even have NIIMs.
Yes.
And they don't even have land. They are not even employed. We were not forcing people to fill any other field. And for people who were not having those documents, we would of course not put them under consideration for the first phase of generation of the human mind. But we know that there will be an opportunity for them to get the documents they don't have. This is a long life exercise.
Okay. And there was an issue, remember you meant to read at the bottom of the page 2 that registration for a human number is mandatory, you must register. You said that was before.
That was before the court ruling.
Yes.
We understand that we were meant to start this exercise in March.
Yes.
And the court ruling was around that time. Obviously, targeting 38 million Kenyans, we had done a lot of preparation of filling in, preparing the blank forms which had that provision.
Yes.
But I also want to confirm that that hard copy which we are filling, we were taking a photo of it as part of our data, could even allow you to live with it because it is not what we are using. What we are using is the digital capture, it's not the hard copy. The hard copy work is, should the clerk have entered a number wrongly, for example, instead of entering 34, they enter 43, instead of looking for that person, we have a digital picture in the file for that person to just confirm that the entry was right. Yes. But literally, the data capture was in a digital format. That's why we have to.
Okay. Then you are asked that if government had in its hands all these personal information in different procedural reasons to one, it could just have consolidated it anyway. Why bother Kenyans and get them to undertake a fresh exercise of these?
I think I explained. First is our databases have been interfered with, treated, and a lot of fake documents before have been produced. That's a fact that we cannot hide from as Kenyans. And we know that because of these documents, there are a lot of people, if I just concentrate on where I have expertise, who, for example, commit crime. We discover their documents, but when you go to a National Registration Bureau, you find that that document that you found on site, the document of record, is much. We have a lot of falsification of documents that even lead to fraud even in banks.
Yes.
And time had come for a responsible government. So how is it possible that we can clean up this? And the only way to clean it up is get the opportunity for the claimant of this identification to come before us and we will verify. And that is a one-off exercise. After this, for that particular person who we shall have cleaned up, they will never be asked for any government document in their entire life. You will never go anywhere generated for you a human number unless you want yourself to adjust your details. You'll never be asked for any documents in the entire life. But we are aware, for example, when we take a 12-year-old, the ones we took pictures, we took thumbprints. But by the time they are 18, their physical features have changed. They want a different photograph because they now have grown beards. They are men.
Yes.
The others have grown the things they grow. We want to have an opportunity, and it's provided for that you can change your details.
Yes. Then on data minimization, you are challenged as an administrator that you are collecting far more data than you need at pages 4 and 13. Why do you need your asked physical location and agricultural details? Briefly, what is the rationale for this?
I think if I take you just for purposes of answering that question to page 7 of my affidavit, where we have the form that, for example, National Registration Bureau uses.
Yes.
We issue an ID. That form, you can see it's many pages. It asks for very many things.
Yes.
And that form, all of it continues to page 9,
yes,
is replaced by one statement. Give us the ID number. It replaces the entire thing of this form.
yes.
But in this form, you will still go and find it has asked you for your physical location. Because remember in my statement when you asked me about the use of Huduma number, it's for planning. We want to plan because we know even where you live. We want to give you better hospitals because we know where you are. We want to build a road that will serve people because we know where they are. And there is no other method known to mankind other than knowing where you are by you telling us where you live.
Yes.
But we also know that people don't necessarily live where they were born. There is a lot of that move.
Right.
And it is only fair because after this, there is a lot of demographic data that can be generated for use by government once we have this data. But it's not new data. If you go to the form I'm referring to,
Yes.
it has asked you for all that data. So the question in terms of cost of computation is it easier then? Because this data, remember, is manual. Is it easier then for us to go and extract that data from the manual forms? Or is it easier since you are before us for you to tell us? I think that's an efficiency question that one has. But the data is important for our planning. And that for us, because these forms are in stores and stores. We can extract this information. But you are before us, and we think this information is important. So which is the easier method? And we decided as the implementers that the easier method is, since you are before us, tell us this information. But it was also not compulsory. Should you decide to skip that bit, nobody was forced.
Great. Now, the Huduma registration exercise, is it an ongoing exercise?
Yeah, I want to say this. We actually bought at 1,500 registration kits that we distributed to the clerks then. These are 1,500 kits. We have 10,000 roughly assistant chiefs, and we have about 5,000 chiefs. These are the primary. If you go to the form that I've just referred you to,
Maybe just repeat the statistics. So, how many kits?
we bought that 1,500.
Yes.
For purposes of completing this exercise within the period given, because a kit can only take so many people per time.
Yeah.
But we knew these kits, and this is a question that has kept coming to us about using kits that belonged to other institutions they buy instead of buying, is because we were targeting our 10,000 assistant chiefs and 5,000 chiefs, who are the primary respondents in this form. I want to make it known to you that 100% of Kenyans, including yourself, not get an ID if the assistant chief has not verified you by signing to this form. You can see that. Now, instead of us carrying the assistant chief to be signing in these forms, then we transfer that to a digital form. We have agreed that those kits will remain with the assistant chiefs forever. And therefore, when a new
On an ongoing basis.
are not forever,
Yes.
so that when a person who is standing in team wants an ID,
Yes.
they will walk to the assistant chief. The assistant chief will fill their details in that document, in the kit, and the kit will transmit data, National Registration Bureau, without the papers moving. And after that, an ID shall be issued. And in our digital population register, data will change that there is another Kenyan who has just turned 18 and has been issued with this document. For the meantime, before we go to the incremental implementation of the children born tomorrow.
Yes.
If a child is born, we know what happens. If you are born in hospital, there is a notification given to the Civil Registration Bureau Services Department by the hospital. And collection of the birth certificate is optional, other than where it will be required when enrollment of school is required. It's the parent who decides that I want a birth certificate. It's not the government that tells the parent to go for a birth certificate. But whenever there is a birth in hospital, that notification is sent to the Civil Registration Bureau, so that when the parent goes there, they find the notification. But they are supposed to fill certain information about themselves that forms part of the questionnaire of the birth certificate. That has been digitized, and that is why all the civil registration plans will have part of the 1,500. And therefore, Your Honor, every time when a birth takes place, it's captured, printed, because that kit is communicated with the Department of Civil Registration. Every time, because the source is the assistant chief or hospital, every time when a death occurs, a death permit is issued, and the issuer is the assistant chief, and issues with that kit. Therefore, the register knows in a year we had these births and we had these deaths. And it's a convenient way of knowing how many we are, because literally our population is what we are now, plus births minus deaths. And therefore, as part of the benefit, I hope I get an opportunity to explain, we then have a digital population register that removes a lot of headache from Kenyans, because we'll then not tell you that today is the census rate, don't leave your house to be counted. It will be real that every second we know what has been added into a database, what has been removed through death into a database, or what has been added through naturalization of people who are not born Kenyan citizens.
Okay, a lot of this seems to be anchored on the sub-chief. Well, what is the reasoning for that?
Because the sub-chief, ideally, I know a lot of times we think of them in a Nairobi setup, but the sub-chief is the assistant chief who handles the minimum administrative unit. On average, our administrative units have 3,000 people, other than in urban areas. So this sub-chief knows everybody. And therefore, when you go to apply for ID, which is a permanent document to prove your citizenship, the assistant chief is the one who we believe anybody else cannot sign, but the assistant chief must sign to say they know you and they know your parents, they know you are Kenyan. Should the assistant chief have doubt because they don't know you, then we go to level 2 of checking who is this person through the vetting committee that I had.
Yes. Great. The issue of software. Briefly, where was it developed? The software, to the extent that you know.
I want to confirm, and this is something that we as Kenyans are very proud of, that 100% of software development has been done by our Ministry of ICT. They have taken it through penetration tests, like every other institution. I will probably inform you, even banks that we have here. One of the most highly paid person in a bank is a person called professional hacker. So it's actually a degree course offered even in hacking.
Yes.
So that when you create your financial system, there's a person who will come and try to penetrate in it. If they penetrate, they are safe because you will adjust your security levels. As opposed to a hacker who went with that guy to class, penetrates and is a criminal.
Yes.
So what we did when we developed this in our labs is we took it to the most stringent of hacking processes. And we continue doing that now, trying to see if this system is allowed. Let's try hacking this direction. We even hire them, the ones who are really professionals, to ensure that they hack into the system. When we are doing our trials, we adjust our security levels. And that is a continuous process, even in institutions. Even if you go to the United States, the institutions that keep data because it is risky, you continue exposing them to these penetration tests.
Yes.
We sincerely think that our colleague Mr. Regero is going into areas we never went to during the examination. We never asked about testing of the system. So if they're introducing about hacking, we would have to begin afresh.
Yes.
The issue of software was raised, and the issue of the security of the system was a key theme in all the questions that were being put to the witness. How safe is this information? Can it be accessed by unauthorized persons? It's all about the software and data protection and security of the information, which is what the administrator is trying to assist the court with. He's giving us what I think is very enlightening information. Who would ever have thought that hackers are gainfully employed to hack systems so that they can test them and we can get improvement? I think it's useful information. And it is within the purview of what has been asked by my friends in course of the
Yes, but again, Mr. Again, we could refer to exactly what was asked during this examination as you re-examine, so that the re-examination is relevant.
most of it. Is it easy for any Tom, Dick, and Harry to come and hack this system and gain access to private personal information?
For Huduma number,
Yes.
we are confident that is near an impossibility.
Near an impossibility. Okay. You were then asked about threats and intimidations. Did you achieve this very impressive figure of 38 million registered Kenyans through threats or intimidation?
We did not issue any threats. We did not intimidate. It is because even after the exercise was closed, there is nobody that has been brought to any actual resolution of affair. We use the assistant chiefs, the chiefs, all the way to county commissioners to sensitize people about the benefits that are enumerated, and they trusted us. That 8 billion they turned up.
Yes. And you've just given us the dates of sensitization, which were before the court orders were issued.
This was 21st January,
Yes.
20th of February,
Yes.
for the National Government Administration Office sensitization.
Yes.
That means assistant chief to regional commissioner, and the pilot training took place between 15th to 17th for 3 days,
Yes.
across 40 sub-locations, covering 15 counties.
Yeah. As the administrator on the ground, do you think you would have achieved this 38 million mark if there was no public awareness about the needs? What was going on?
It's absolutely not possible.
Yes.
People are queuing. Even at the time we closed, we still had queues.
Yes.
Only that the time for that had been opened and closed. And I'm sure if this court allows that we go to phase 2, we are aware that Kenyans are more than 38 million. We still capture the difference.
Yes. DNA was an issue that was raised with you. I mean, it seems obvious, but can you clarify, administrator, are you collecting data related to DNA, and you even have the capacity for it?
We are not, we did plan, we are not planning, and we will never collect DNA. And I think, other than, if you just allow me a second to say what it is,
Yes.
other than over-sensitizing it, if we just pause to ask what is DNA, what is DNA? DNA is only meaningful if it's a comparison. There is nowhere you can store DNA and say pick DNA. It can only be a comparison. You have a paternity problem, bring your blood or whatever body fluids, the other one brings, and they are compared. And for that purposes, that's finished.
Yes.
But you cannot say we are keeping blood DNA of Kenyans in some store. And I think that matter has been overplayed. It's not practical. There is no country in the world that does that.
Yes.
Cannot. It's only that in our description of the word biometric, we use the dictionary description, but it's not even practical to do that.
Yes. Then you are challenged that in any case the law is amended does in fact permit the collection of DNA information. And our question is the administrator, would you venture to collect DNA unless you get the capacity and sufficient safeguards?
We do not have the capacity. There is no country in the world with that capacity. But DNA samples is defined in the biometric are still used, but through court orders.
Yes.
For example, if there is a scene of crime and we find traces of people we believe to be criminals and a person who we think was at the scene of crime, then we go to court, get an order so that we are able to compare the DNAs of the two people to establish is the DNA that we found on a scene of crime equivalent to the DNA of the suspect. If they are the same, then we have sufficient reason to believe that this person is the same person who was at the scene of crime.
Yes.
Yeah.
Then there was a question drawn from George Kevoro's affidavit to the effect that the petitioners in that petition number 2 are not really opposed to Huduma number. They have some other concerns. And you get this interesting response that it is like somebody who says, I love you, and then go on and slap somebody. Like, could you just put it in the context of that petition trying to stop the registrations?
I think the entire reason we raise court is because the petitioner wants the process of creation of digital population register for whatever fear is stopped. That's the reason we are here. And I cannot believe, because talking from both sides of the mouth, can't believe that we are here trying to stop registration and still say we want it, because we have availed and it still remains open even now, every opportunity to demonstrate that the fears of data security are unfounded, and we have taken every precaution to take care of that. And if the petition finds it in its favor, can actually terminate this matter. We take them to our labs to penetrate cases, and that's a commitment we can give to the court.
When you challenge able to try and
penetrate that system, then we are wrong. But it is not possible to penetrate that system. I actually confirm.
Very, very useful. Then you are challenged, or are you educating the public? Are you going out to inform them and so on? To begin with, do you even have a website where anybody can access information about Huduma?
We do have a website. Everything we're not doing, we are not registering anymore. But we have a website that gives information, and it could be passive for now because of the orders of the court, but it's there that gives basic information about what we are looking for. Everybody can access it.
Yeah. And is your office, is your ministry open to the public who want to consult? For instance, we had the CEO of the Nobel Rights Forum here come and tell us that he was able to see the CS friend Matiang'i. Is your office that open for public access?
I want to confirm that always remained open. That is why the CEO was able to have very good audience with the cabinet secretary. I also want to say, in the spirit of openness, the CS has actually recognized that situation of people who have found themselves in Kenya, the ones that we call stateless. They are not, by our strict definition, Kenyans, and they are also not recognizing the country that we suspect they belong to. And they are hanging, and the CS has actually established a task force that is deciding what do we do with this person. They are resident here in Kenya, they per se don't meet the requirement to be called Kenyans, and they also don't meet the requirement of their other country. What do we do with them? And we have examples of the Makonde tribe.
Mr. Regero is once again reading information on the stateless people. It's an area we would very much like to engage on because the petitioners have been working with them to register them, but this is not a matter that arose. If he meanders into new areas, then we will be saying that the court ought to allow us to further cross-examine this witness, which means the case will be endless.
With respect to Ms. Gabriel, I don't know if she was paying attention to the cross-examination that Mr. Bashir. I have something I have quoted here verbatim, where he put to the witness, you can be a Kenyan without documents. So these are part of the stateless people, and I think the administrator. Is this a baraza or something?
Yes.
You can ask.
And if the one, the members of the party.
Particularly the second row.
these are court proceedings.
Yes.
And we've got people who will be happy to escort you to the cells if you become unruly. So please maintain decorum.
Yeah, we also that. So it is that context, my lady, of stateless persons who are floating, they belong to the state, that I'm trying to solicit the NIIMs administrator to explain to us, is NIIMs going to come to grips with that problem? And how is it advantageous to the country? That is squarely within the issues that were raised in this examination.
Okay, yes, that question was raised, but if I remember correctly, it was Mr. Bashir was referring to Kenyan citizens who don't have identification. That's how I understood this question.
Okay, let's confront it that way.
I think I want to confirm and give an example of such people.
Yes.
We have 3 families, say in the Dora campsite. These kids are probably Kenyans, but they are born, they don't have a birth certificate, they reach age 18, they don't have an ID, because for them to get an ID they require all that. And there is a process of that is stipulated in our regulations, which includes vetting. And I can tell you, while I am PS for Interior, I have confronted that problem when we were doing an RRI earlier, where we went to the Dora campsite, found children there, the street families, who, when you ask them to fill the form, feel about your parent, they don't know them. Feel about things, you don't know them. How do you deal with them? And that's the essence of having the vetting committee to verify that this person is actually a Kenyan.
Yes.
But the fact that they are in the geographical space of Kenya and they have come to pick a document that proves citizenship does not mean that if the assistant chief, who is the primary guy to confirm, is in doubt, that we force him. It is the assistant chief who will say, in the door, and I'm giving a real life case, we are with the assistant chief there, then the committee is formed, including the ones of the street families. Some of them would have ID. They would verify to us this person is actually a Kenyan, was born here. And when that committee is satisfied, they will then make recommendations to overrule the requirement of feel apparent, because they will never find the apparent. They will make a decision that will facilitate that Kenyan to get the documents. After they have those documents, because they are the primary requirements for Huduma number, they walk to the next desk and register for Huduma number. But we cannot register them for Huduma number without sorting their primary problem, because we have a responsibility to do so.
Yes. Great. Back to the issue of awareness, information to citizens. Are you familiar with Article 35 of the Constitution and the citizens' right to access information?
Yes, I do.
Has anybody ever invoked that article and come to you seeking certain information and you have declined to give them?
Anybody who comes to us seeking information, we always gladly give it, because we are obliged to comply with that article of our Constitution.
Yes.
And I can confirm that there is a petitioner in this court who walked to around the house to ask for this information that we declined.
Yes.
Yeah.
Now, in any case, in your massive documents here in court, have you actually put out a lot of information to do with the NIIMs and how it operates? In your responses here, have you favored the court with as much information as you could about NIIMs?
Yeah, we have given adequate, maybe not exhaustive,
Yes.
information of why NIIMs and what we expected to do and what are the benefits of NIIMs and how do we intend to use it, who are the beneficiaries. We have listed all that in our affidavit. Who do we want to benefit?
Yes.
In my earlier description, I had gone through the government planning perspective, then went to the citizen perspective, because it's a Huduma number. We want Huduma efficient way of serving people. So I give both, but in terms of direct benefits that we probably have not put that in the affidavit, I said what it means when I explained the interministerial committee that was composed of all the people who deal with the data, right from Kenya National Bureau of Statistics, people of census, people of agriculture, people of industrialization, people of health, all the people, and they were at the verge, I say that, of conducting a similar exercise. Besides fatiguing Kenyans, what was the money they were going to spend? And I want to confirm. For example, registration of farmers in budget was 3 billion. Registration of USC in budget was 2 billion. Registration of voters, you know very well, took 6 billion. And you know what census has cost. It has cost us after 18 billion. What we are saying, besides the saving of what was just about to happen, what is the future saving? We are talking of this money being saved when we have spent 9 billion. And this, besides the conveniences to Nigeria, some of the considerations that made us bold to go ahead and roll out this program. Your Honor, a simple thing that the government is doing now, called social protection, where we are sending money to the elderly people. This was based on goodwill. But when we have a digital population register, we don't have to walk through villages looking for people over 70 to give them the support, because the digital population register tells us, there is in this village an old lady who is 72 years and needs this. So we are able to roll that to the assistant chief and ask the assistant chief, give us the number, account number of this person or their M-Pesa account, so that every end month through our digital register, we give that support to that person without them ever doing anything. Yes, because it's a right that they are given by our policies in the country. And the benefits, we can go on and on, because once you're in the digital platform, the benefits are infinite. Sky is the limit. We can go to any sector you point at, and there will be benefits.
Okay, we will touch on that later. Now, you are taken to the data protection policy attached to the Roman change today. Now, tell us, was it designed specifically for news, or it has broad application?
The data protection policy is broad.
Yes.
And I didn't have time to say that. Said collection of data from public starts from when we enter this building. At the gate, you ask for ID. That information is attached to a person, and you don't know how it's used. When you are in traffic, there is a lot of data that is being picked, either by cameras or whatever method. In our lives today, you go, M-Pesa has your data, Yahoo has your data, WhatsApp has your data. How is it used? So that the data protection policy is not confined to not just the data we are picking in this form. It is much broader.
Yes.
And I think that is why we are proposing in the law that there is established a proper infrastructure that you look across the whole spectrum.
Yes. Yeah. The data controllers / processors, which were referred to again in the Mr. Chain affidavit, can you confirm, is that a proposal in the pending bill?
Yeah, that's a proposal in the bill. What we have now processed is the policy.
Yes.
But like in any law, we start by creating a policy that then generates the law.
Okay.
Now, the law we have as the executive, because we also understand that the legislature has independence, have been having this law in Parliament for a very long time, and we are doing our best to ensure that attention is paid, because we know what it will do when it consolidates all these broad application of data protection. Yes. And we are happy that it has now probably gone through its third reading. But it is now on course. We expect it to become fruition.
So if it is enacted, you will then appoint these controllers and processors.
They will be appointed. The honor it's a fact that you cannot appoint these people by using a policy. An office can only be created by that law. So we will not appoint the commissioners or those people.
Yes.
But each of the institutions that collects data from the public has its own administrator of that data. If you come to the National Registration Bureau, if you go to the Civil Registration, if you go to KRA, if you go to NTSA, all of them have their administrator. But we expect that when the law comes in, because those administrators are governed by the law that will be enacted in the business process.
Indeed. Now, does the fact that the bill on data protection was tabled only recently mean that there are, in fact, no laws relating to data protection?
That is inaccurate. We have every institution that collects data from the public has laws that governs how that data is collected and how it is handled. All of them. And I think what the data protection bill is trying to do is there are areas that are not obviously covered by any law. For example, when I go to a building and I'm told, or I'm entering an estate and there's that black book where we fill, because that's personal data.
Yes.
There is no law that tells that watchman how to deal with that data. And therefore they can come and give it to Al-Shabaab, who will continue using that data to your detriment.
Yes.
The law that is coming is a little broader than the formal institutions that collect personal data. But the formal ones all have laws that govern its protection.
Yes. Yes. And is there anything wrong, in your view, in government trying to improve the existing laws for the betterment of the population?
Your Honor, is about efficiency. Those laws are all scattered all over. For example, if the Huduma bill, for example, is enacted, passed and enacted, it proposes first transitional provision, and it also proposes that instead of this so many, it repeals quite a number of laws in it because they become redundant with it, but it doesn't mean individually that they are insufficient, only that they are scattered all over. We want to tidy up that area. And I think this is a process that continues all over. Just recently, we did a similar process for security laws because they are all over. What is this bill that we bring that will harmonize our security laws so that we can look at security from one room instead of looking at it from NIIMs, prisons, from KDF. What is that law that will help us see our security from one source? That's all we are doing, both for data protection and Huduma.
Wait. Then it was put to you that you had actually put the cart before the horse by rolling out NIIMs before the enactment of this bill. What is your reaction to that?
I think that's a misconception. The executive first has a responsibility to deliver on its promises to the Kenyan people, as long as it's doing it within the laws that exist. And because the laws that existed did not give us, as existed pre-February of 2018, did not give us adequate space, legal space to roll out the centralized data collection and collection of Kenya. We proposed an amendment to the Registration of Persons Act, and that amendment was processed properly through Parliament, and became the new Section 9A, under which we have actually rolled out this exercise. Yes, and I think in doing so, through the executive order that was gazetted, we had been advised, as we use Section 9A, to also consult with other laws, because there are laws of Kenya that govern the registration of the whole spectrum of people. And that's why we went to Births and Deaths Act, we went to the Basic Education Act, and so on, so that the entire spectrum of people who are to interact with are covered. Yes, I think that's how we move forward.
Are you aware, even there are several laws that criminalize illegal access or misuse of personal information, even as we speak?
We have them, and I think I had read the one that is very critical to us because this collection is under the RPA.
Yes.
And I actually bring the attention of the court to the section that says illegal or illegitimate diversion of information to a third party.
Yes.
That's certain punishment.
Yes.
And that is why since 1963, when we started registering Kenyans as a Kenyan government, there is never been misuse of this data because the consequences are clear in the law.
Yes. Have you ever heard of the Computer Misuse and Cyber Crimes Act?
Yes, I have.
Okay. Now, you are taken through section 90 and you read it to mean that it was applicable to all Kenyans. Do you remember that?
That is understanding.
Do you think you
as read together?
Yes.
With what I've just stated.
Yes.
We are not reading it alone. We are reading it together.
Yes.
I think to tidy up, that's what we are proposing. To make sure that it's not scattered all over.
Yes.
That's what we are proposing a law that then brings what we are saying into one house. But we understood all to be Kenyans without exception, including the one born down.
Yeah. Yeah. In fact, if the amendment excluded any Kenyans, would it have served the intended purpose of bringing everybody on board?
We would then not have been in order to
Yes.
use the registration of passports act.
Yes.
But we used it confidently because all to us meant all Kenyans without exception. Because if there was going to be exception, it was easy to clarify that amendment.
Absolutely. You would have said so. Then the executive order became the subject of debate, page 155 of your book. You have it with you, page 159?
Yeah.
And it was suggested to you that this executive order cannot legally amend the law. Okay?
That was suggested, yes.
Upon a plain reading of that executive order, does it in fact purport to amend the law?
In our understanding, it's not. It's just telling us that while we are carrying out the NIIMs exercise, it's clear in the bullet 4.
Bullet 4, let me get there.
On page 19 of the order,
Yes.
the second column.
Yes.
It says clearly that in the performance of its function, the interministerial committee and the functions are described. What are the functions they are described in the part 1 under the keywords?
Yes.
We are told that we shall be guided. The keyword is guided because the registration of persons act is a law.
Yes.
In Kenya, the Births and Deaths Registration Act is a law.
Yes.
We are told which laws we guide, and the reason why it is put this way,
Yes.
our understanding, is because even though the amendment has said all, and we have understood it to mean all,
Yes.
including the people in refugee camps, because they are in Kenya. So they say residents, citizens, and these citizens resident in Kenya. We wanted to leave out doubt. We have adequate laws that we deal with the below, even if they all cover it.
Yes.
We have the Births and Deaths Registration Act.
Yes.
We have the Basic Education Act, which allows us to use the NIIMs information that is part of our questionnaire. We have the Kenya Citizenship and Immigration Act because we are dealing with foreigners. We have the Refugee Act because of those ones in the refugee camp. And we are also allowed to look around for any other law. fortunately, these were adequate. We didn't have to look for any other.
Okay. So by stating that the committee shall be guided by, and then it lists all these laws, was it your understanding that you are then required to abide by the law?
That was our
And
understanding.
also, in the understanding, does the president have authority to issue executive orders under the Constitution?
Our understanding is that it does. And I know it is part of our laws. I will remember which section.
You go to Article 131.
Will be there.
The authority of the president, what the president cannot do.
Yes, we have Article
1B.
1B that exercises the executive authority of the Republic, of course, with the assistance of the respective president and the secretaries.
Yeah.
And in terms of practice,
Yes.
there are very many numerous government programs and processes that we carry out using a similar avenue.
Executive
Like
orders.
the legal notice or the executive orders.
Yes.
Even opinion of it.
Yes. Then the issue of cost versus benefit. In fact, it was put, the benefits are accompanied by attendant risks. Those were the words of your questioner. What do you have to say about the cost versus the benefits of NIIMs in the system?
I think I had attempted.
Yes.
There are those benefits that are directly money, and there are those ones that are not money, but conveniences to Kenyans, which I had also alluded to. But directly, they said, in terms of hard cash that is going to be put into this, which mainly, because when I talk of 9 billion, sometimes it may sound like it's 9 billion to any other. Our main cost was the acquisition of about 1,500 kits and payment to the registration assistant, which formed a very big chunk of this 9 billion. But at completion, we have spent the 9.6 billion. As opposed to into eternity, we will never need to do census if we implement this completely. Because every second we know our Kenyans. And whenever this has come into my line of argument, I always say, let's compare ourselves with say, the United States. And someone tell me when they are told not to move because they are being counted, because they are digital. And what we are trying to create is akin to the social security number of the United States, which gives the full life of a person.
Yeah.
But there's 18 billion that we spent, which we can save. Every 10 years we will be saving that. There is 3 billion that we are going to spend just to get the same questions that we are asking about farmers. There are the 2 billion that we are going to spend on UHC. Now we have the information. There is the registration of voter. They said our digital population register will be able to tell IBC, without IBC going to the villages, that the following set of people are 18 and above and are eligible voters. Your Honor, when this goes to incremental full implementation, the meaning is this, that when Kenyans turn 18 and above, and IBC using its laws speaks that data, you don't even have to travel to your village to vote because you can vote in a digital platform.
Yes.
That's where the rest of the world is going. And I think as Kenyans, we are trying to keep pace. But the first step, Your Honor, must be creation of a register that is trusted.
Thank you. In any case, in paragraph 43 of your reply affidavit, you had attempted to list some of the benefits, non-monetary benefits. Paragraph 43.
Yes, there we tried to list those.
Yes.
And we listed them they are actually from A
to
O, and each one of them either is improving on service delivery by government to the people, or it's improving on our way of managing the affairs of the country, whether it's from a security perspective. They are listed here. And I think nothing can quantify this in terms of the 9 billion that we spent, because some of this, because Huduma number registration is a one-off. At an individual level, once a child is born, because that's a gender that if we want to understand its benefits, we must walk in our minds. When a child is born and given a birth certificate, that birth certificate forms a primary folder file of that child, and it will walk with that child in the entire life till death.
cradle to grave.
Yes, and I think in the management of the affairs of that child, and I give an example of when someone is before a hospital admission and they have been discharged. What is the process that a person does? The process that they carry out is walk around. There are people who are discharged in the morning and the patient can't leave by evening because of the kind of walking they have to do. Now we are trying to solve some of those conveniences, and we have listed them properly in my affidavit.
The Nubians. Has there been discrimination of this community?
There has never been, and it's not policy of government to do that. I stated in our, and it's a fair thing if we actually want to be fair to a government. When we have our registration officers, and I will start actually in order and then go around. In Busia, there will be every tendency, if the services this side of the border are better, there will be every tendency for a person who is Uganda to try to come and acquire Kenyan citizenship because they are neighbors. Some of them are even relatives, acquire because of the benefits that accrue from being a Kenyan citizen. It is only fair that if the assistant chief, who is the primary source of confirmation that this is a Kenyan, doubts that citizenship, they form a committee as stipulated in the law to just satisfy themselves, because once they append their signature on that form, it is hanging around their neck. Should this person be proven not to be a citizen, then they'll have to say why they say it. So they say, I don't know about this person, and the law provides a provision for doing that. A person who is in Namanga, and they are Tanzanians, they want to become Kenyans. A person who is, and we are dealing with that problem now in the refugee camps, people wanting to cross over to become Kenyans, even though they are in refugee camps. And therefore, the regulations in the Ministry for, because reversing this registration is so cumbersome, you know that, Your Honor. I must, as an assistant chief, satisfy myself that this person is true, and that happens. I want to dispel the misconception that whenever a person of Nubian ethnicity appears before a registration clerk, they are told, go and vet. It is a decision by the primary signature, who is the assistant chief. I am not sure about this person. I, as a person, will not put my neck on the chopping board when there is a provision of vetting. And that happens for all. And I have given an example, and it is recorded. If there is a Kikuyu in Turkana who looks like is suspicious to the assistant chief, a similar thing is done. Go to Nyeri now, Your Honor, and you'll find vetting committees. And Nyeri is right in the middle of Central Kenya. But because of the cosmopolitan nature of that place, whenever there is a majority of the people will be lawyers, but you'll go find Luos there, you'll go find Somalis there. Everybody who is at that border, whether they are Somali or not, when the assistant chief is not satisfied, they will form a committee. But I also want to say this, Your Honor. Not everybody in Busia, when they want an ID, is subjected to vetting. It is the assistant chief who will raise a flag that I don't know this person, and then they will ask for help from now the institutions that they read.
Yes. Can you confirm that in paragraph 7 of the smaller affidavit, which starts at page 3 bottom, that you have dealt fully with this question and alleged discrimination? 7A going all the way to...
I can confirm that first of all, there is no vetting that is peculiar to the Nubian community.
Yes.
Vetting is done equally at the suspicion of the assistant chief.
Yes.
And the reason why that happens is either you are in a border community or you are in a cosmopolitan area where the assistant chief is not sure.
Yes.
And we have a system that does that. And it does it equally, whether it is for Nubians, whether it is for Digos, whether it is for Kikuyus, it does it the same way. We can confirm that we have continued to do that. Just before, so that I satisfy myself before I came here, because our rapid result initiative for registration of persons is ongoing as we raise court, and it's across the country. The place where there has been a lot of enthusiasm and positive registration is actually in Kibra.
Really?
That's a fact that we can confirm.
Okay. So those paragraphs A to R, you have explained. Just go to I at page 4, because the issue of proactive action, the government is supposed to be, in terms of affirmative action, in I, how do you say that one bears reading out as far as the Nubian community is concerned?
Want me to read it?
Yes, please. I, page 4.
Yeah, I read I, that the government of Kenya has continually taken positive steps towards promoting the ease of registration of Nubians and other minorities in the country. In the case of Nubians and other border communities, the government has included representatives of those communities as part of the vetting committees. Other measures taken in that regard include mobile registration campaigns and measures aimed at reducing delays in the issuance of national identification documents. And I can confirm that we are in that phase now.
Yes.
Say another 6 months, we go to that phase. We continually go for this mobile registration so that we can reach out to the people who are able to come to the offices for registration.
Yes. There was something about historical discrimination, and you tried to explain, but you were denied, and you were told you can explain later. What was that explanation? You were about historical discrimination?
I think to put it in perspective, so that it's clear. Anybody who was in Kenya before 1963 and their descendants, those ones were coopted as Kenyans. But there are those ones who came after 1963. And these are the ones that there has been an attempt to say that simply because I'm in this geographical space and I belong to that community that had been given a special consideration pre-1963 treatment, I then need to be admitted without question. I think we have seen there are obviously communities in this country that suffer from that disadvantage. And the government has gone out of its way to ensure that all considerations are put in place. And it is for that reason, Your Honor, that you find there is a consideration that has been done, and the Makondes were considered as for that tribe. Is that consideration that the Asian community have been considered? So there is a continuing consideration of this, and I think even the Nubian community are part of this consideration. But the fact that the Makondes were recognized as the 43rd tribe in the country, it does not mean that a Makonde who is not a Kenyan who comes, because there are Makondes who are not Kenyan who come will claim that we are 43rd tribe, even when they don't qualify at all to be Kenyan. I think these are some of the considerations we put in place.
Excellent. Then there was a statement you made that the citizen chooses convenience in the delivery of service to them. How is that concept to be understood?
The provision of Huduma number to make sure that you are not walking about when you want service is a government initiative to ensure that citizens are convenienced when they are on service. But should a citizen choose that they don't want that convenience, that when you want to, for example, go to, just use an example, pick a bank loan, you want to walk KRA, you want to walk National Registration Bureau, them stamping for you that this is certified through copy of original. If you want to do that, the law and our intention is not to force you to do it. But if you want that is done in the back room through the digital register, then we are providing that solution through the Huduma NIIMs registration. Yes, that's all we are doing. So it's for now, and I continue saying it's not mandatory, and that's why we have people in this courtroom who don't have it, and nobody will ever force. But probably we need to ask ourselves, after all this exercise and we have cleaned out, what is it we get?
Yes, eventually what does a Kenyan get?
And that is a pertinent question, because after we have collected all this, what do we give Kenyans? And this is pressure that the Ministry of Interior and Citizen Service that has continued to pile on us. Because most Kenyans don't know that there are court orders restraining us from further processing of the data. They're asking, you came here and put information about that. Where is Huduma number? So eventually, when we have collected all this data, what do we give? We give something called a Huduma card, which then represents a Huduma card that has a digital chip. And plainly speaking, this is what we have been struggling with for the last 10 years, to give Kenyans that generation ID, which is digital.
Third generation ID, which is digital.
Because after we have collected all this, what do we give you? We will give you a card.
Yes.
What is that card called? That card is an identification, because Huduma process is about identification. That card is your identification card. Only that the process that brought is called Huduma. So just like we came from first generation card, the one that was very big, came to second, we are now moving to third with the times. That is what we eventually channel.
Okay. We get there. Then for the vetting committees for the Nubian community, you counted down with council provoked 10 members. Of those committees, 9 government officers, only 1 elder, he said. Is it fair to say that this elder is the equivalent of, say, the assistant chief in the villages?
That elder is a person trusted by the assistant chief,
yes,
to give accurate information about that person. And it's not a voting city.
Yes.
It's not that we have more numbers, we have less numbers. All the assistant chief ones, because if you look at the composition of that committee, each one comes there with their own expertise. The guy of national intelligence comes with a perspective. The police comes with a perspective. The assistant chief comes with a perspective. And the elder comes with a perspective. So all they are trying to do is to convince the assistant chief that collectively we have agreed this person, the parents, the descendants, is a Kenyan, sign this form. Then after that form is signed, the minutes of that sitting that did that verification is sent to National Registration Bureau, and they process now in the usual manner because there's evidence that there was consideration of that person.
Yes. The phrase best interests of the child resonates with most of us. Are there any benefits to the child under NIIMs?
I had started by the planning side because the children also require services. I know the examples have heavily been on NHIF, NSSF, KRA, but the child needs services. When a child is born, that child needs medical attention. When a child is born, that child needs education and all the services that go with children. It is only logical that government will be in a position to know where these children are and at what stage and what service they need, so that that service is provided to the children without ever failing because of lack of planning, because of lack of information. So the information that we need for a child is not any information that is different from the information that the civil registration has. It's basically about the parents and about where they were born, they are Kenyans, and all we are doing is tracking the development of that child for purposes of planning.
Yes. Yeah. Then you were taken to the African Commission on Human and People's Rights and the African Committee of Experts on the Rights of the Child. Can you confirm that in paragraph 9 of your smaller affidavit that you have responded fully to these issues relating to these two institutions?
Yeah, I can confirm that when we went for lunch break, I took it upon myself to check. I can confirm that we did not agree with all the recommendations of the commission, and neither are we obliged to, but we actually responded. We gave a report that gave our point of view, and that report can be made available.
Okay. And referring to that decision, it was at paragraph 69 of this huge document, as petitioners document. You remember that paragraph 67, you were made to read 1 to 5?
I remember the one that was on an iPad.
Yeah. Can you confirm that each one of these paragraphs begins with the word recommends?
With my age is fading my memory, but I really remember I was reading the comment each one of them, but you can confirm. But I remember that is what to say. It was recommended, not directing.
So there were mere recommendations.
That's true.
The government could or could have taken or not taken.
And there is precedence.
Yes.
Not every recommendation given by AU, yes. Not every recommendation given by UN, not every recommendation given by the international organization, yes, is implemented. There is a difference between those and the one that we are bound to. For example, the one of the UN Security Council. Yes. Those ones we are bound to comply because they are consequences. But there are these recommendations of the well-being of the country. Yes. Those are left to the country. But the registration of children in Kenya, the treatment of children in Kenya is core to the aspirations of our constitution. And I think we go by it, and we go by it. Every other demand, whether it's from African Union, is met naturally. That's what we have stuck to.
Yes. And is government's first allegiance to our constitution and our laws, or to continental recommendations and positions?
My understanding is our first allegiance is to our own constitution. Anything else is secondary.
Yes. You mentioned that paragraph. Does it all begin with recommend? That's okay. We've highlighted it in submissions. Now,
so that Facebook is big. I confirm that all of them from 1 to 5 stars you can comment.
Thank you. Then, in the issue of adulterated records, you seem to lay a lot of emphasis on the physical attendance of the registrant before the person registering them. Why is this so important?
It is because I said the purpose of introducing the word biometric in the amendment, because known fact, you cannot duplicate fingerprints. You may look alike facial, but you cannot duplicate fingerprints. And because of the nature that our databases have been interfered with, and we cannot we all as Kenyans know that is true. Then we needed the physical person to come so that we match them with the data that we already have. And when that data matches completely to the satisfaction of our filters, then a Huduma number is generated. Should the data not match, then we go to the second level of that verification to check, is our filter too strict? Eventually, because we know that we are taking 10 fingerprints. The requirement is that all the 10 fingerprints must match as a filter. If they don't, if there are people who could not complete the 10 for some reason, they took 5 or 6. Does it mean they are not the ones? So we will continue adjusting. But we also within the Registration of Persons Act have a provision where a person who wants to vary the data, as long as it's confirmed it's there, they have the right to do so. There are procedures of doing that, and the examples are many. The ladies who get their IDs before they are married and they choose to change their names. There's a provision where you have to walk to the National Registration Bureau, fill some forms, pay something, and alter your document. The only thing is it must be verifiable that you are the one. And that's why you must swear an affidavit, show some documents that show the reason why you want to change the name, even have affidavits from your parents.
Yes. Then you are taken back to the data capture from the second page. You remember that box about agree and ticking it?
Yes, from there.
Second page, and it was suggested to you that there shouldn't be just one box, agree, that they should also don't agree, so that Kenyans have some kind of choice. Now tell us, does it mean in your understanding that if you agree with whatever has been collected, you then tick agree to show that you're in agreement?
I know most of us have forgotten what was happening.
Yes.
This physical form, we did not want people to sign.
Yes.
Because then it would mean that people who can't sign would have to do ink. Because it's a physical form.
Yeah.
And we said what is the representative of physically those people who went to register. Know that when you reach this point, you are given a stylus pen to sign.
Yes.
And when you could not sign, there was space for you to put a digital outprint.
Yes.
Meaning that the information you have given is correct. There is nowhere in the form that we are using, and I'm saying this is just representative of you have agreed, but the actual data that you are capturing because we didn't want to buy ink for everybody and the pens to sign.
Yes.
Was digital. And at this point, when you have finished before you exit, you are being warned that you must have then provided accurate information to the best of your knowledge.
Yes.
And sign here. So you are either given a pen or in a thumbprint. There was space for you to do that as an exit.
Okay.
And we again say, I honestly don't see the reason why I would proceed to fill this form, which is voluntary, so that I say don't use my data.
Yes. That's right. We are almost coming to the end, Dr. Kibicho. There was the issue of national security, and when you try to explain how national security might override data protection, you were stopped. What is the reasoning in that concept?
It's because issues of national security, where it endangers lives, it endangers property, are non-negotiable. If crime is committed here, and we need to carry out verification of who caused that crime, it's non-negotiable that we go negotiating whether we access the data or not, because then we will have to be sitting and asking criminals whether we positively identify them or not.
Yes.
And those are provided for in our laws that govern how do we classify security issues. And we have levels of crimes. It's a murder, it's very different from a person who stole chicken. And I think that is defined for of particular interest. And this must concern this court. We have all the time, whenever we have incidents of terror attacks in this country, recovered IDs. And there is no time that ID matches with the actual person. It will always lead you to a person who is innocent.
Yes.
Because of the adulteration that I talked about.
Yes.
So they would plant a decoy for us, and it has reached a time when we must clean up this, so that if we find that document, it certainly will belong to the person who is registered under it.
Yes.
But there are those areas that really the provisions for following certain must be waived.
Yes.
And I think examples are many, but we have laws in national security that govern how do we treat certain types of crimes. And that's all we are asking for. And the proposed law proposes that level.
Good. Then there was the issue of incremental registration of all births, vis-a-vis names. What is your comment?
I said, even though I didn't have adequate time to explain, the mix that we are in now is because as we try to implement NIIMs, we have people with all documents, the 10 of them. What do they do with them? But the incremental, as we understood it from the Estonia case, is for full implementation. This child who is born after this court, if it finds it fit to give us permission to proceed, will have a birth certificate and a file that remains one till then. But meanwhile, we have the rest of us who are alive today to deal with. And that is why we are collecting this data and try to imitate a scenario as if you are born when NIIMs was there. But we shall be faced out ourselves, and that is what incremental to us is. In probably another, let me say another 70 years when nobody in this room will be alive, we will have everybody with one identifier, and it has taken countries ages to get the social security number in the United States. Probably took 60 years. We have countries that are attempting, even in Africa here, Rwanda, Nigeria, and all that. And it's a journey that we must start walking. But Estonia We have 1.5 million people. We have in excess of 40 million people. So the scale is obviously different.
Understood. Then the last question that was put to you was that whether any regulations have been gazetted for NIIMs. Your answer was no. What law are you using to operationalize and implement?
We are using the Registration of Persons Act, Section 9A, read together in the executive order.
Thank you very much. Now, in conclusion, you stated that you await the court decision before you could possibly process all this personal information that you are currently holding. Now that you have the opportunity before the judges, why do you think they should allow you to continue to process that information and to issue the ruling?
My appeal is we want to digitize the population register so that we can get the benefits that are immense in terms of service provision. When we are allowed by this court to process, what will happen is we will collapse all the 10, 15 cards that you have, including your ID card, and give you a digital ID card, which we have christened third generation ID cards for the last 10 years. When you get that digital ID card, what it means is this, and it will, I know, because my colleague who is technically more competent to address the format of that digital data presentation. There will be in that card a chip. That chip is encrypted. And depending on who you appear before, they have a reader that just reads the information relevant to them. For example, when you have that card, because you will not have a driver's license after this, and you appear before a traffic policeman who has a reader,
Yes.
and he puts your card into the reader, it will only read information from you that relates to driving. If you go to KRA, it will only read information from that chip because it's encrypted.
Yes.
That relates to your tax issue.
Yes.
If you go to NSSF and you want your pension, ordinarily when you want your pension, you'll be told before we pay you by law of NSSF, go and get the tax clearance so that if you owe government any money before we pay pension, we deduct it. It will tell you, go and get us your ID so that we know it is you. So when you appear before NSSF, the reader relevant to NSSF will extract just information relevant to them.
Yes.
And what Kenyans would want is, because we are going to that generation ID anyway, can we go to that generation ID in a format that solves this historical problem? And that is what we are trying to solve. And my appeal to this honorable court is that we are allowed actually to give Kenyans that benefit.
Thank you very much for your very useful evidence. Thank you. I have no further questions unless the court has any questions for you.
Dr. Kibicho, thank you very much. The court does not have any questions. We can release you. And thank you for coming.
Thank you very much, Your Honor.
So, Dr. Nyaundi, your witness was released earlier. Many event it's now 5:05. So I guess we will adjourn until tomorrow.
Yes,
At 10 a.m. So we'll start with your
we have two witnesses. Yes, they're on machine. And both for the who will be at we'll start with Mr. Ochen and then with so,
Yes.
This is not really part of the case, but with the court's permission, I wanted to introduce a fellow advocate from the state of New York who has been visiting and has been with us during these proceedings, Ms. Laura Bingham. She's also an associate professor in the New York State University and also works with Open Society, which is affiliated to the past petitioner. I just thought it was courtesy to a fellow colleague to mention her presence. And she is an officer of the court in New York State.
Okay. That is noted for the record.
Most obliged.
Yes, this
I want to see her. Where is she? Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, so we then adjourn until 10 a.m. tomorrow morning.